guy.
3, 2, 1, go! Oh my god. Welcome everybody to Collector's Cash mid-season in Kansas City. Today we're starting round 1 with Ethan PacoTaco Simpson against John n10siT Masters. On Ethan's side, he's running a double dragon team with Salamence, Garchomp, Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele, and Celesteela Gengar.
On John Master's side, we do have the Ninetales, Tapu Bulu, and Metagross.
Oh man, these are two really good friends. Oh man, I think actually the entire Kansas City area, anybody that's playing anybody, you end up kind of getting to know everybody in the area, but these two have been friends for quite a long time, so this will be an interesting matchup. They've played quite a few times before, and actually both of them made Worlds last year, and I mean, not a bad track record for the both of these players.
Also 2016 Worlds qualifiers, and Ethan actually he made it in 2017 as well. So they're both very well-established players, especially in their region.
Absolutely. Ethan is actually probably one of the top players in the Kansas City area. He's usually kind of the front runners for these kind of tournaments. So we're going to see turn 1. We've got the Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele on Ethan's side against the Persian and Ninetales on John's side. One thing that is kind of interesting, seeing that Psychic Terrain come up, that Persian not going to be able to get the fake out. Where would you like to be on John's side here?
Well, looking at Ethan's team, it looks a lot like Alberto Laura's team that won the Hartford region. The Skydrop support Tapu Koko with the Specs Tapu Lele. So if I'm John here, try to set up the Aurora Veil with Ninetales, as that would give you a nice safety cushion, prevent the attacks from coming out from the Tapu Lele and Koko. Try to make that a priority.
One thing that we did notice is that because the Psychic Terrain is up, we're pretty certain, and by pretty I mean very certain, that that Tapu Lele is probably slower than Tapu Koko, barring any speed ties. But that could be something interesting. We always have to be careful on the first round, especially without team sheets, that we don't know what might be at what speed tier, what might be hiding a choice scarf to just be below certain speeds. But I doubt that we've got that kind of shenanigans going on. But a nice parting shot to reduce the special attack there on the Tapu Lele, and a Volt Switch to get Tapu Koko out of here. That'll allow him to reset the terrain later on, especially now that Bulu has kind of taken the Psychic Terrain out.
The Ninetales go for the Icy Wind here. That will lower the Tapu Lele and Celesteela. Celesteela is not as important, but the Tapu Lele's speed, so that the Bulu extra damage. And we see the Lele actually go for a Moonblast.
Yeah, that parting shot actually helping out here, keeping that Bulu a little healthier. Hail damage going to come through and do quite a bit of damage to everybody. Just total HP, I guess. A little bit of chip here and there. And now our grassy terrain coming in and healing up a little bit of that damage all the way around.
Signifies that the Bulu does, in fact, speed this turn. We'll be able to go for an attack. They both have to be very wary of the Celesteela, as that is a very threatening mon to.
Yeah, indeed. We do see that Ninetales is going to go ahead and switch out here. Now that it got the speed drop on everything, it looks like it probably wants to stay alive for a little bit later. Maybe be able to set the hail back up a little later on. Tapu Koko going to get out here, reset the terrain, drop any damage from this Horn Leech here. Without the grassy terrain, it's going to be doing a little bit less damage.
Horn Leech will recover a lot of damage. The Heavy Slam from the Celesteela going onto the Xurkitree, which deals a decent chunk of damage thanks to that critical hit. The last mod by John, which is very smart. Smart amount to have in the back with the Celesteela on the field.
Yeah, and one thing that's really nice for John here is that Xurkitree being in the electric terrain isn't going to be too upset about it. Any sort of tail glows, any sort of discharges, I mean, Tapu Bulu is going to be able to resist a discharge. Whether he's going to want to be that ballsy or not is debatable, but now we see the Sky Drop preventing anything coming out of that Xurkitree for a little while.
Ethan, as he's able to prevent the Koko from being in any danger, the KO onto the Tapu Bulu with the Celesteela, granting the special defense boost.
And now we know that pretty well how this Celesteela has been trained. It's got more special defensive bulk than it does defensive bulk, as that Beast Boost is going to raise its highest stat, or its highest train stat, rather. Snowbilicat. This is some of these nicknames. I love that we've gotten the nicknames back. The ability to see Christmas and Snowbilicat, fantastic nicknames on John's side. Just want to point that out real quick. One of the best parts of Pokemon is having the ability to nickname things, just to talk to your friends.
Very nice. It's kind of, and it also, of course, you know, in the in-game, you want to build that friendship with your Pokemon. You got to have a nice tight bond with them. I really think that John had a nice turn there where it will allow him to prevent the Xurkitree from taking any unnecessary damage from the Skydrop, as he can fake out the Celesteela here. Just for the taunt, actually.
Yeah, that taunt. Probably trying to prevent any sort of Leech Seed, which is really a nice way to try and mitigate the amount of damage that Celesteela is going to do over time. With this ice, the hail chipping away every turn, not wanting to deal with the Leech Seed, as we just saw, taunt preventing, any chip damage throughout the game can kind of build up over time. And it looks like John's really wanting to prevent some of that, because he is running a fairly offensive team. We saw Persian that doesn't have a whole lot of special defense. Xurkitree can be tough to deal with, its defensive sides. And we saw Ninetales, which isn't known to be especially bulky either. He's got a lot of low defensive Pokemon, and trying to prevent any extra damage from that Leech Seed over time that would heal up the Celesteela. That taunt really helped him out right there.
So, no, 100%, you're 100%. It is a very defensively bulky team, probably built around to potentially set up around the Xurkitree so that it can set up the Tail Glow, evolve around the Metagross Salamence core that became so popular as the late meta. Set up, get the Beast Boost rolling, get the attack boost so that you can. So, we'll see if Ethan is on that. The Xurkitree picking up the KO onto the Tapu Koko here, getting a special attack boost.
It's interesting to note that that John completely ignored Celesteela this turn. He's gotten rid of the biggest threat on Celesteela, which is that Leech Seed, giving it the extra longevity. He might also be trying to account for some of the protects that might come out of Celesteela, but just knowing that Heavy Slam isn't going to do that much to Persian there, because it's got the it reduces the amount of physical damage that's going to come to Persian with its ability. And then knowing that Xurkitree is going to resist it, Celesteela wasn't a huge threat that turn.
The Celesteela, he wanted the Tapu Koko gone so that he could eliminate the most offensive threat on the field. Celesteela, all it would really be doing is going for the Heavy Slam there. If this is style of team, then Celesteela probably has the substitute. So Heavy Slam is its only attacking move. Come in, which will most likely outspeed the Xurkitree.
Looks like Celesteela there, still trying to go for the Leech Seed. Ethan just kind of poking around at moves, seeing how long his taunt has lasted. Looks like he's probably got one more turn of taunt left.
Well, we're able to see what John can do here. The Xurkitree is very much so threatened by any attack that this Tapu Lele can dish out for the berry to necessarily be procced yet. Now we see Celesteela switch out. We have a Gengar be the final Mon on the team here.
And that parting shot, we saw that turn 1 that the Persian was outspeeding Tapu Lele, so no problems there. Parting shot going to reduce any damage, and Bulu would be a great switch in here. Trying to get the terrain out of Psychic Terrain so that we're not taking full-powered Psychics. But it looks like that's not going to be the case. We're going to bring out Ninetales here, maybe as some fodder to allow a KO. Gengar, Focus Sash, and the Curse Body. Oh, that's debilitating. One of the strongest moves possible on our Xurkitree, completely eliminated, and then the special attack drop just to top that off.
That's a very important Curse Body proc onto the Xurkitree, because we saw the Xurkitree outspeed, and now that it's a +1, that's going to be doing a ton of damage to the Tapu Lele, and it makes Celesteela switch in a lot safer here, as it won't be taking a Thunderbolt from the Xurkitree.
Yeah, it was an unbelievably important shot there. The Moonblast from Tapu Lele doing a good chunk of damage to Ninetales, but the biggest thing there was absolutely that Curse Body. Unfortunately for Gengar, 1 HP is not enough to survive the hail, so Chan did a great job there, bringing the hail in to pick up that KO. We see an Aurora Veil come out, and Xurkitree protecting itself from any extra damage, and the Heavy Slam's going to go ahead and take out that Ninetales here.
We'll give the Celesteela going back to +1 with a special defense boost.
Mm-hmm. And even worse now for John here, with Xurkitree still having that Thunderbolt disabled, Celesteela bulking up with the +1 special defense, it's going to start getting harder and harder for John to be able to take this Celesteela out unless he can start doing it quickly.
Absolutely, and with the Persian coming in, that's not a lot of offensive pressure, but a comparting shot, and maybe prevent Xurkitree from, if the Xurkitree is the pinch berry, putting it berry range and having it.
We are going to go ahead and see that foul play into Tapu Lele, trying to get as much chip in there as possible. And Xurkitree with some increased special attack, not quite enough. But these are important things to keep in mind for Game 2. John's Xurkitree, even with... Oh, that's so unfortunate. Even with the Aurora Veil, not able to survive there.
And that Leech Seed is just going to slowly drain away the Persian.
And Celesteela is going to keep... Oh, no! Ethan, what a madman! Revealing the berry there after the hail damage. It was interesting to see that we didn't have any leftovers recovery throughout the match, so that's a thing to keep in mind. But now we've got confirmation that it is for sure a pinch berry. Celesteela already built to be very bulky, and now with the pinch berry just to kind of seal the deal at the end of the game, that's really unfortunate, and we can see that Chan just straight forfeits there, knowing that there's not any more information that he wants to give before Game 2.
What adjustments do you think that John needs to make in between the match, get into more in his favor?
I would like to see a little bit more Xurkitree and maybe an earlier Aurora Veil. That Icy Wind early on really didn't help out that much, and the Aurora Veil seemed like it was a little too late. So I think that from John, I'd like to see a little bit earlier defensive boosting from that Aurora Veil. And from Ethan, maybe a little bit more utility from that Gengar. I'd like to see a few more things out of that Gengar. We saw the Focus Sash.
And it just died to the hail.
Yeah, so we lost it to the hail immediately. So, I mean, maybe if we don't see Gengar utility here, then just scrap it entirely. Cursed Body was great, but that's not a guaranteed pickup. Something that might be a little bit more reliable would be that Salamence, maybe. Get some Intimidates off on the Bulu, The rest of John's team really doesn't take too much from the Intimidate, but I mean, maybe even Salamence would help a bit better. I'm not sure, but these are kind of the things that I'd like to see, that the Ninetales doing a little bit more with that Aurora Veil a little bit earlier. Dropping the speed on Lele and Koko was cool, but it didn't quite get him where I think that he wanted to be.
It was a very good chat. You have to be wary of the, of course, you have to be wary of the Lele's. I'm assuming that was choice picks just by the damage it did from the Moonblast. But the Xurkitree is extremely important here because we saw in game 1 that it Tapu Lele initially. So just being able to do that, getting the extra damage off immediately in John's matchup. I don't know if he necessarily has to play it a lot differently because the Cursed Body was very inconvenient for him, as it didn't allow him to Thunderbolt the Tapu Lele, or didn't allow him to Thunderbolt the Celesteela, and that could have swung the matchup in his favor more. So we're going to have to see what these players go for in game 2, as John leads Persian and Ninetales, and we do see Tapu Lele.
Yeah, so it looks like Ethan is the one that's making the adjustments here. Maybe not really enjoying the speed drop of Tapu Koko and Tapu Lele early on. It kind of forced him to switch things out really quickly. But it looks like he enjoyed the fact that he couldn't get faked out by the Persian. So we'll have to see where this goes. And just to keep in mind here that Gengar's coming out again, and we have to watch out for Gengar because that Focus Sash in the Hail, as we saw game 1, not quite as useful.
Gengar's not a very bulky Pokemon, so it'll be here for about a turn. Persian going for the parting shot on the Gengar. Actually, Persian will be switching out.
Yeah, maybe John was expecting a switch there, or just wants to prevent a big Sludge Bomb coming out on any sort of Fairy type. But now that we see the Metagross, it prevents the Sludge Bomb from picking up the KO on this Ninetales, and it's going to prevent any sort of Shadow Ball on this Metagross from doing a huge chunk of damage.
A very smart switch by John, as that's not going to do a lot to the Metagross. And it also allows for Metagross to just put on a ton of pressure onto the Lele. It does need to be wary of the... But if it procs the weakness policy, that could be huge.
It could be. And then one thing that I'd like to point out is that John is going to be at a tough decision here. Because he can have that Ninetales sit out here and take another Sludge Bomb from Gengar and just have that KO be the last thing that Ninetales does. But the problem is that if he's got Bulu in the back, he can't necessarily switch that out and take a Sludge Bomb on Tapu Bulu.
Persian actually switch in. Gross, staying in Shadow Ball. We'll see how much damage this does.
Oh, there's the weakness policy. Activation.
Unfortunate for... It's very unfortunate.
That Zen Headbutt miss is crucial. That's really unfortunate for John. Oh, I feel so bad for John, man. I think we've all had that problem. That X just getting in the way of Metagross's eyes, preventing him from seeing where that Zen Headbutt is supposed to go. Oh man, that's crushing. But now, we've seen that Ninetales was possible to come in, and it does indeed come in. It looks like John really is prioritizing that Gengar right now. This may signify that he's got Bulu in the back to Ethan, and Ethan's in absolute control here. This Gengar is just doing so much damage.
See, the Metagross actually protect this turn. And we see when unfortunately it misses the Tapu Lele, but a lot in the end will be. We already saw the Metagross outspeed. It's a very very smart but if he would have done that the last turn, if that would make that, he would have been able to threaten the KO on both of these after an Icy Wind. The Persian would still be available on the field.
Yeah, now we're down to John's last two Pokemon. It looks like John has completely foregone the Bulu. Just kind of faking to it maybe with some of his uneasiness around Gengar. But definitely leaving Xurkitree in the back here, trying to have a late game sweeper that's going to be able to sweep through the rest of Ethan's team. But right now, Ethan is in complete control with this Lele Gengar lead. And John's been kind of trying to dance around to adjust to it. But it looks like he's been struggling a little bit against it. And so now we've got a Thunderbolt out of the Xurkitree, going into the Gengar, finally picking up the KO on this Gengar, and allowing Metagross to breathe a little bit more freely, knowing that he's going to be able to resist. Oh, man. More of that cursed body. This Gengar is kind of paying for itself in spades right now. Sounds like Matt is losing a little bit of connection here, so we'll let him jump in as it. Oh, there we go. All right. Matt's having a few connectivity issues. We'll see him back in a minute. At the end of this game, with John and Ethan, we've got a Garchomp out here, and Ethan is pretty well known for having a Scarf Garchomp, and that's really. It's been a really tough matchup for John on this one. Missing that Zen Headbutt, which allowed Gengar to kind of stick around a little bit longer than he wanted. Ooh, that Xurkitree surviving that Earthquake really nicely, though. And going for a Dazzling Gleam. How well is this going to do? It doesn't even do that much. Comparatively, thinking about how much a Dazzling Gleam should do to a Garchomp, that's actually pretty respectable damage for that Garchomp to survive with. Matt, have we got you back? It sounds like no. That's unfortunate. Looking at this matchup, thinking back to what Ethan is known for with Garchomps, knowing that he's pretty well used to having Scarf Garchomps and knowing that this Garchomp is outspeeding Xurkitree, this might be the end times for Xurkitree here. Oh, but he's going for the Protect. We mentioned earlier that they are friends. We can't see player cameras here, but I imagine that Ethan and John are having a nice little laugh, knowing that Xurkitree is not going to be able to survive another Earthquake here, but giving them a little bit more time to enjoy the match together. But actually proccing the berry. Beautiful Pinch Berry there from Xurkitree. Taking a little bit of Leech Seed damage. Looks like John really wants to stick this one out. Oh boy, that's a little bit more exciting. I'm terribly excited to see if this can do it. If he survives one more Earthquake here, he can get the Dazzling Gleam off. He still has to survive a Heavy Slam here, but it would give him +2 special attack, and he'd be able to hit the Thunderbolt on Celesteela, which hasn't had a chance to boost any special defense yet. We saw in Game 1 that it boosted special defense. The Earthquake is going to be super close. I don't know if that's going to be enough to be able to survive a Heavy Slam from here, though, let alone a Leech Seed. But making sure that we bring it in to 1-0, still a lot more respectable than a 2-0. Always want them style points there. But it looks like we've got that Heavy Slam going into Xurkitree, which is going to clear it out there at the end. So a great game from the two of them. John,
got to see the 2-0 win by Ethan Simpson in this set.
I think that was actually great adjustment from Ethan in Game 2 there.
I agree completely. He brought the Gengar in very early. The Gengar threatened. It just threatened a lot of offense on the Ninetales, on the Metagross, even a little bit on the. It could have even exerted a lot on the Xurkitree. And if John would have brought the Bulu in the final game, that could have been very good for Gengar in that matchup.
Absolutely. I mean, I had mentioned between the matches that I wanted to see Gengar do a little bit more, but man, I did not expect to see that much extra damage out of Gengar.